So we're going to get going. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Lunch and Learn with Bryan Liu today. So we're going to talk to Bryan about effective communication. So how do you talk to a non-actuarial or not technical audience and ensure that you collaborate effectively at work? Bryan is an associate of the Society of Actuaries and an associate of the Canadian Institute of Actuaries. I'm going to let Bryan talk about his professional background. He knows it better than me and will do a much better job than me. But I'll give you a glimpse into some of the volunteering that he has done over the years for the Society of Actuaries. Bryan has been volunteering with the Society of Actuaries since he was a student. And 10 years ago, when he was a second-year actuarial student, he wrote and published an article titled A Student's Guide to Land an Actuarial Internship in Canada Connect News. As you can imagine, it was very popular, and he had a lot of success with it. As his career, he gained more experience. Bryan had found out the importance of effective communication when he was working with non-actuarial colleagues, such as lawyers and underwriters. And he wrote an article recently published in the Actuary of the Future newsletter called Actuary in a Non-Actuarial Job, with very, very interesting information and tips about how to accomplish that effective communication. So Bryan is currently the vice chair of the SOA's Actuary of the Future section, and he is also a very active volunteer with the Canadian Institute of Actuaries. Bryan, good morning, and let's start with you telling us a little bit about your professional background.
Yeah, morning, Marta, and again, thank you for having me on this Lunch and Learn. So hi everyone, I'm Bryan Liu. I'm an associate actuary with Milliman in the life practice. So right now I work primarily in mergers and acquisitions work with private equity firms, insurance companies, and other insurance and reinsurance entities. And I also work on asset liability management projects with insurance companies and different clients around North America, primarily in Bermuda, Canada, and the United States. And before my time at Milliman, I was an assistant manager at Deloitte's actuarial consulting practice in the Toronto office, where again, I've had a great opportunity to work with people from around the world, from around the insurance industry, the insurance value chain, like Marta said, from people such as lawyers or underwriters, accountants, technology folks, management consultants, and as well as people from Ireland, from Singapore, Hong Kong, Indonesia, basically around the world. And it's definitely been a good journey so far in the actuarial consulting space, where I had this opportunity to work with people from not just different countries, different regions, but also from different parts of the insurance industry. So it's definitely been an exciting journey so far, and would love to share more about what I learned through these experiences, whether that is trying to communicate ideas, communicate technical content to different people, as well as how to work with different people who are not from an actuarial background. And on top of that, like Marta said, I've also had the opportunity to volunteer for both the SOA and the CIA, that being the Canadian Institute of Actuaries, and being involved in different committees and different speaking opportunities. And it's definitely been great so far. So perhaps something not exactly related to this Lunch and Learn, but I'll definitely recommend for everyone to volunteer and give back to the Society of Actuaries, as well as other actuarial organizations you're part of.
Thank you for that. That is very important. It's a great way of learning more, making connections, and advancing your career. So, Bryan, let's talk a little bit about where your actuarial story begins. How did you find out about the profession? What attracted you to it?
Yeah, sure. So I think like many others who eventually became actuaries, my background really as an actuary really started because I really liked math in high school. I was good at math in high school. So when I was looking at universities, the topic of actuarial science came up. And back then I finished high school in Hong Kong, and I didn't really know what actuarial science was, apart from the fact that it loosely translated to accurate calculations in Chinese. So I didn't really have a good idea of what being an actuary really entails. But then I did more research in terms of the actuarial career, the exams that you have to write, the education that you receive as an actuary, the type of projects you work on as an actuary. And I think it was a great way for me to combine my interest in math and then also apply it in a very practical business context, very financial context, and really basically apply math in real life. And as I moved towards, as I started in university at the University of Waterloo, I also had the opportunity to be in the co-op program. And through the co-op program, I was able to take part in different internships and co-op programs across the insurance industry and in both Canada and in the US, as well as in the actuarial space and outside the actuarial space in the investment space, focusing on insurance companies. So throughout the co-op program at Waterloo, again, I was exposed to more hands-on experience with actuaries and different people in the insurance industry. And that was really a great way for me to kickstart my career, both in terms of learning about the actuarial career in high school, and then being in university, having those opportunities, having those internships to actually figure out what an actuary is really about and what the actuarial career is really like.
So on that note, what does a typical day look like for you?
Yeah, I think that's always a very interesting question, because I love to tell people that when you ask me about a typical day, there is no typical day. And I've been an actuarial consultant for since 2018, and a lot of my days really revolve around the different types of projects that I've been involved with. So as you can imagine, a lot of it is really working on the projects itself, working with different people on my team on the project, and then also communicating with clients, figuring out what their needs are, what their thoughts and feedback might be on certain things that we work on. So it's really quite a variety of different ways that my typical day could go. But I think giving an example of a project I was involved in the past. So a project I did in the past was really providing appointed actuary services work to a particular client. So that really means that we are serving as the company I was at was serving as the chief actuary for this particular company. So signing off on the reserves, on the capital, making sure that this company is operating and that the reserves and capital are being calculated appropriately according to the standards and regulations for this particular company. So in that particular project, a lot of the work was not just making sure the reserves are right, doing the capital calculations, forecasting how much capital you need, what you need to do to adjust your assumptions, what type of calculations you need to do if there's a change in the business environment, if there's a change in the interest rate environment, if there is a change in the way that this company operates as a legal entity. So that's obviously definitely very interesting. And a typical day with this particular project would really involve doing those type of analysis, doing those type of calculations, managing a team of consultants with regards to this project, making sure that deadlines are met, but then also meeting regularly with the client to see what their thoughts are on what the direction they would like for a particular deliverable to look like. So what they think a particular report should reflect, what some of the main points this report should have, as well as particular content that they might be interested in. So for example, the Canadian capital regime, the LICAT or LIMAT regime. So I might be doing a lunch and learn with the client just on this particular topic. So it's really, this particular project, a typical day really depends on a lot of things, and it's really just client focused and seeing how we can help the client's needs. And then at the same time, also fulfill the duties and responsibilities that we had as the appointed actuary for this particular client.
Very good. Before we continue, I just forgot to tell everybody, if you have any questions that you would like to ask Bryan, there is a thing at the bottom of your screen. It says Q&A. So please click on it and type your question. And at the end of the presentation, we will leave some time for Bryan to answer any questions you might have about his career, about his experience, about anything that you are curious about and that Bryan can answer. So Bryan, you mentioned that you're originally from Hong Kong and you're currently living and working in Canada, and you're consulting in projects around the world. So what are some of the challenges that you encounter in that international work, and what are some of the rewards?
Yeah, I think there's definitely rewards and challenges with regards to working with people around the world, and myself being from not a North American background. And I think that goes with a lot of things, not just working with people around the world, but just working with anyone with a different background than yourself. You always you would come from different places. So there will be different perspectives and point of view and ways of communicating that will be different between two people. And myself coming from Hong Kong to Canada, I think there's definitely a difference in terms of the way that people communicate and There's definitely differences in work culture. And I think that goes the same for different clients I work with as well in Europe or in Asia or in other places in North America. And I think challenges definitely exist in terms of not just the communication style, the working style, but also different ways that people think about actuarial science. So, for example, here in Canada, we have the LICAT regime, which is principles-based, and you have different ways of looking at things versus a United States, you have the RBC regime versus in Europe, you have Solvency II, BSCR in Bermuda. So even just on the topic of capital, there's so many ways of looking at things. And while there might be some similarities, I think very often people tend to look at things from the regime that they're most comfortable with. So when you're speaking, you have to sort of understand where they are coming from. For example, if you're a Canadian working with a European client, it might be helpful to just grab and get an understanding of a basic understanding of Solvency II, so that you can better get your message across. So it really comes down to just understanding other people's perspective and trying to speak the same language that they're speaking, so that you can get your point across. And I think that's definitely very rewarding, not in terms of just new knowledge that you'll pick up, but also working with people from around the world. You get to know their perspective, not just their different working styles, not just their culture and so on, but also in terms of what their particular region might be thinking about in terms of certain insurance products, or how they might do things in another region of the world. And I think that's fascinating to just learn about how one single profession, actuaries, could be so diverse, and there's so many different ways of doing things. And it's really exciting to just hear about the new developments going on, especially in Asia, where things are definitely moving at a very, very fast pace. And it's exciting working with people around the world.
It sounds like it. Sounds very exciting. So when did you start thinking that actuaries needed to communicate better with others in their insurance industry, with other people that they traditionally work with?
Yeah, and I think when I started picking that up, I was earlier on in my career, and I think I learned that the hard way through communicating as an actuary. And I was communicating to accountants, I believe, and actuaries and accountants work very closely together in terms of getting the balance sheet right, the financial statements, making everything is solid. But then at the same time, actuaries and accountants also come from two very different educational backgrounds. And very often actuaries, we like to go into very in-depth in terms of how you arrive at a certain mortality assumption and the different methodologies that go behind that particular mortality table, how you're grading things, if you use GLM or different methodologies that went into certain actuarial assumption. And while that is definitely very important, very crucial, and you just have to start thinking about, hey, if I explain this to someone without an actuarial background, would it even make sense? And what is the point that I'm trying to get across? And earlier on in my career, I really struggled with that in terms of trying to explain some of these concepts, some of these content to someone without the actuarial background, and ends up just being information that I could not really convey across because I wasn't communicating it the right way. So I think through these different interactions where I worked with people outside the actuarial field and where I had trouble, I had barriers in terms of trying to get my point across, I started thinking more and more about how I'll be able to get that message across to people from outside the actuarial space, people who didn't spend thousands and hundreds of hours studying a certain concept or reserving. They might not know, they may not have that in-depth knowledge that actuaries have. So it's important to, I figure that it's important for me as an actuary and as a consultant to speak the same language as they are, and to understand that different people have different educational background. For example, a lawyer might be explaining a insurance legal concept to me, and I would have no idea what they're talking about. So they have to do the same thing in terms of making sure that I understand their concepts. And as an actuary, I have to do the same thing, because actuaries do not work in just an actuarial department. Maybe your supervisor is an actuary, maybe your supervisor is an actuary, but then they work in an insurance company, or they work in a consultancy, or they work in a brokerage where they have clients, they have interactions with different people from different backgrounds. So it's really this whole insurance ecosystem or insurance value chain involves so many different people from so many different backgrounds that as an actuary, you cannot really strive just communicating to actuaries. You have to figure a way out to talk to different people from different backgrounds.
That makes sense. So what are some of the things that you think students can start doing to work on their communication skills before they even become credential actuaries? Do you have Any tips?
Yeah, I think there's definitely different ways of doing it. I think speaking from my own personal experience, when I was in university, I took part in a lot of different case competitions. I think those are always helpful. Those are always enjoyable. And these might not even necessarily need to be actuarial case competitions. They could be competitions with management consultants. And I think that's a good way to just practice communicating to different people in the form of a presentation. And I think beyond that, there's always Toastmasters Club. There's always different opportunities within a company once you started working to have the ability to present or just really grab coffee with other coworkers to try to just have a chat with them, understand where they're coming from. So I think it really comes down to just being mindful of the fact that communication is a very crucial skill in the actuarial space, and then just finding these opportunities such as case competitions or other extracurricular activities while you're in university. And after graduating, there's definitely opportunities where that is to organize a lunch and learn for your company or participating in Toastmaster clubs that I think would be helpful for everyone.
Sounds very good. So since you became an actuary, since you were a student 10 years ago, what are some of the main changes that you've seen in the actuarial profession?
Yeah, I think the world and the actuarial profession have both changed a lot since from 10 years ago. And I think one big thing is definitely the technology is becoming increasingly important, both through changes in the ways that actuaries do their modeling, to the ways that technology companies have been involved in the actuarial space, whether that is to help models run quicker or to provide a new way to distribute insurance products. I think technology is definitely one thing that's always been very important, but has become even more important throughout the past 10 years. Mm-hmm. And I think in other areas, so for example, in the areas of financial reporting for actuaries, in the world of IFRS 17, actuaries are working very closely with accountants and with people in other areas of the insurance space. So there's always that increasing integration of actuaries and non-actuaries on that front. And I think the advance of data science, which is definitely a topic that we hear a lot about these days. And I think as data science becoming more important and as technology allows insurance companies to collect more data and to process more data, I think that's also another more important area of the actuarial career.
Yep. Well, that would take us to, I have some questions from our audience that I am going to read to you, and I'm going to kind of piggyback on that comment about data scientists, because there is a question that an anonymous attendee asked, what is the best way to communicate with technical experts such as data scientists who have more technical skills than you? Or do they have more technical skills?
Well, I wouldn't say one person always has more technical skills than another person. I think it really is a case-by-case basis. So let's start with that. But I think in terms of communicating with someone with a more technical background or perhaps just more in-depth knowledge of a certain area, I think one thing that you have to keep in mind of is what is the end goal. So for example, if you're working with a data scientist and the end goal is really to just price auto insurance, and you're really just thinking about the profitability or how they would look like in the market, then I think you should focus on that rather than the technical background. I think that should be priority number one. Think about the actual business and financial impact. And then after you have a good understanding of that, then you can start diving into the more technical details. So I think definitely think about what you're trying to accomplish together rather than just trying to figure out how a certain model works. And I think beyond that, it's also always important to keep yourself updated on different topics that are different emerging topics in the insurance space. And that includes data science, that includes insurtech, that includes different areas of financial reporting around the world. And I think it's always important to have that continuing education element in your career. So I think to ultimately sum up my response is really think about what you're trying to accomplish and use that as the end goal. And then in the background, always just try to learn more and find out more about the world and the actuarial career and different technical aspects.
It's a very good point. Ryan wants to know, what is the most important competency that actuaries follow within the 8 competency of an actuary?
Yes, that's a very good question. Unfortunately, I don't think I recall what the 8, the specifics of the competency framework. So I would say that, so from my personal point of view, I think there are definitely things that are important about being a good actuary. I think really comes down to 2 things that I can think of right now. And I think number one is really having an understanding of the work that you're trying to do. So a lot of the time, actuaries, we're running models, and these models, they might take a lot of configuration to figure out. And I think it's very important to understand what you're doing and how that fits into the bigger picture. Because with that understanding, then you would know how your work product is being used. And I think it's important to see how that fits in the bigger picture so that you understand where you fit and how you can perhaps add value, how you can make changes that will be more beneficial for the project that you're working on. And I think number 2 is basically the topic we've been talking about today, just communicating your ideas, because you could build the perfect model. If a perfect model exists, you could build a perfect model, but if you're not able to communicate why that model is suitable for the particular project you're working on, or why that model is up to standard for the particular project you're working on, or you're not able to communicate results to a senior audience, then that model would not be used, and then all the hard work would not be would be wasted. So I think being able to understand what you're doing and how that fits in the bigger picture, and then also being able to communicate your results, communicate the work that you've done, I think those are 2 very crucial elements of being an actuary.
Yeah, so going back to how important communication is. We have a question from Key, who says, can you share some tips about how you quickly understand the project scope when you get new projects from new client companies? What kind of communication do you think is more effective to get everyone on the same page?
Right. So I think that question, I think it really depends. I'm giving the typical consulting answer, but it really depends from person to person, project to project, company to company. But I think what I've seen people typically do, some of the, I guess, best practices are really just whatever project that you're working on, it's helpful to speak with other members of your team, because that the member of your team might have prior experience that would be helpful for this particular project, that they can bring more background into this project. And if you're working as an analyst or a consultant role, there's obviously more senior team members who will be able to provide that important business context of why this particular client is pursuing project A or project B or project C, and why that is being done, and what the role of your consulting firm is in this project. So I think it's really important to speak with perhaps a senior team member who will be able to provide that context, and then also reach out to other members of your team who might have some historical context or experience with a similar project, but a different client, or a same client, different project. And everyone can bring something to the table to make sure that the whole team is apprised of the situation, of the context, and how to best serve this client.
Very good. We have a couple minutes left for a couple more questions. So how do you effectively communicate to peers the value of actuarial work versus the work of auditors, risk managers, or accountants?
Yeah, I think I think again, it depends on really the project that you're working on, or the particular area that you're working in. But I think a lot of the times people do understand. I think around the world, people do understand the value of actuaries versus accountants and where that differs. And I think in areas where it doesn't, I think the responsibility is on you really to try to get that across, to let people know what is actuarial work, what is the actuarial profession. I'm not asking you to show them all the SO exams that you have to write. I think it is important to educate people if they're not aware of what an actuary does and how that differs from what an accountant does, and what an actuary might know about risk management that accountants might know, or what actuaries might know about certain areas of insurance capital that perhaps a risk manager might not be aware of. And I think as actuaries, our educational background really gives us the that unique intersection of not just the math behind the insurance products, but also how the insurance products work, how you would report them on a balance sheet, how you would assess the profitability of these insurance products. And I think that gives us tremendous value in the insurance industry to really get our point across and provide value to insurance policyholders, as well as to different insurance consultant clients.
And last but not least, how has your ASA designation helped shape your career in the actuarial field?
Yeah, so I think the ASA designation is definitely a very important milestone in my career so far, and I should be getting my FSA within the next couple of months. So I'm pretty excited for that. But I think the ASA designation is definitely important because people do recognize the importance of the actuarial education, and achieving the ASA designation is an important milestone in that. And on top of that, being an ASA really gave me the opportunity to take part in different SOA opportunities, just like this particular Lunch and Learn. And then also in other SOA volunteering opportunities that I've been involved with in the past. So for example, the professional section that I am the vice chair of, the Actuary of the Future, you have to be an ASA or an FSA to become a council member. So that really opened up a lot of doors in terms of being involved in different volunteering opportunities that allowed me to meet different people, learn about different things, and really also develop myself as an actuarial professional.
Very good. So actually, we have a couple more minutes. So how does one with actuarial background fit into a brokerage firm?
I think what this question is referring to might be referring to companies such as Aon or Willis Towers Watson. And I think when you think about it, those companies, when they are, let's say in the context of reinsurance brokerage, there's definitely areas where actuaries can bring their value in terms of analyzing how a particular reinsurance treaty might look like. Or on the health and benefits side, I'm sure there's areas where actuaries can, again, provide their insights in the health and benefits context, valuing different employment benefits, pension, and so on. So I think there's definitely a space for actuaries there. But unfortunately, I'm not involved in that space, so I would not be the best person to ask.
Okay, well, thank you very much anyway. Before we leave today, I just want to let you guys know, everyone in attendance, that we are going to have our first in-person Canada Connect event in Philadelphia on June 13 and 14. You are going to be able to participate in live sessions. Even this year, for the first time, you will be able to participate in the fun run with all the other attendees. So very fun event, lots of great speakers, great opportunity to network. And as an affiliate member, you get a discount. So I have added the link to the chat. So go and check it out and see if you're going to be in the Philadelphia area. It's a fantastic opportunity. I'm going to be there. The rest of the engagement team will be there. Bryan, I don't know that you will be there, but maybe in the next one, we'll catch you. And so that's all for today. Thank you, Bryan. This was very, very informational. I hope everybody has enjoyed you as much as I did. Bye. Great day.
Thank you for having me. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.